Welcome to the Business of You podcast, the show dedicated to helping service entrepreneurs build a better brand to grow a bigger business. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I'm here each week empowering you to put yourself out there, sharing actionable tips and inspiring stories so you can create your personal brand, grow your dream business, and build your future, all while making more income and more impact doing exactly what you love. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Well, look who I have here, everybody. Welcome again to the show. Hello, I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I want to introduce you to my guest, Liam Darmody. How you doing, Liam?
Doing great, Michelle. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for Liam because his story is phenomenal. Like many of us in 2020, many of us, including me, right? We all decided to start putting themselves out there. So for those who haven't met you yet or who know you well, let's tell us all about your story and how you got to where you are today on LinkedIn.
Sounds great.
Tell us, back in February 2020, what were you doing? You were working full time, but then your post today, I alluded in my beginning, you decided to start posting. You weren't posting before. Tell us a little bit why you started putting your brand out there.
Yeah. So I've been on LinkedIn since 2004, 2005, early on. I was a recruiter when I graduated from college. And so obviously LinkedIn is a place to be. Sort of between the years of 2014, 2015, I posted some articles when LinkedIn was popular. And I remember being absolutely mortified to do it back then. And that's the article that you referenced that got that was in February. But I had posted articles, and I always noticed that whenever I posted articles that had some element of human authenticity to it, vulnerability and a little bit of human voice, I always got so many direct messages from people that were like, oh, that post resonated with me so much. And we're not talking about engagement like I have now, but just in general, I noticed that there was something weird. Like LinkedIn was almost like anything you could post on Facebook or something about how you're feeling, people would just not bat an eye. But on LinkedIn, for some reason, people would be like, oh, that took so much courage to post that, And I would come to realize, years later, that a lot of people think that way. The majority of people are almost petrified of posting genuine, authentic selves on the LinkedIn network. So I was on paternity leave. My daughter was born in November of 2019. I was on paternity leave, and I was like, all right, while I'm on paternity leave, I'm going to stop lurking and start. I had followed people on the platform for a long time, people like Joel Lalji and Andy Foote, and a lot of the people that we know on the platform. I said, I'm going to do it. And I was just so tired, and I just didn't do it. But I swore that after I went back to work, I was going to start doing it in January. That's when I started to post more frequently, more regularly. I posted that one article that was why LinkedIn is the place to be in 2020. I was doubling down on it. And yeah, it got a whopping 450 views or something like that, which makes sense knowing what I know now about how LinkedIn distributes content. But you would think that they would want something that says why LinkedIn is the best place to be wide, right? It's kind of why I picked that headline. So from there, I just started posting more regularly. I post on a daily basis or, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, and then started getting the creative juices flowing. I would start to keep a bit of a backlog, although admittedly, I'm a terrible content planner. I sort of wing it on the fly more than I don't. And then things just started to happen. I started to come into my own. I started to find people that resonated with me and who I resonated with as well. And it just, the community just started to swirl, and I started to build. And you've heard that term, find your tribe, right? It really is something that happens on the LinkedIn platform. And it's very unique because other social media platforms, usually you sort of start with your core group of friends and then you go from there. But here it was almost the opposite. I made all sorts of friends on this platform in the last year, and it couldn't have happened at a better time because 3 months later I would realize we were going to have a pandemic, and I needed that socialization. I missed those serendipitous conversations that happen in the coffee break rooms and things like going to lunch. I just had a blast. And I like to say that LinkedIn became a hobby for me, and then, turned into sort of a passion. And then I ended up having some side business on it as a result from a consulting standpoint. But, I've really just focused on just being myself and using it as an outlet for my own creativity and curiosity.
No, I love that. And thank goodness, timing is everything. When you started, you said kind of like me, like on December 31st, I'm like, I'm all in. I did the 365. Did you at that moment just say, I'm going to just start posting every day or consistently? And you stuck to it, right?
Yeah, I tried to post at least 5 times a week when I started. Didn't always do it, but at least 3 to 5 times per week, I usually was able to hit that. And then within a couple of months, when I saw the engagement and I saw people interacting, I just started to post more. So every morning I would wake up and say, what am I going to post on LinkedIn today? It's kind of like the first thing I did. And some days you wake up and, you don't necessarily know, and that's okay. Usually I spend like 20 or 30 minutes just browsing other people's content and engaging with their content. And sooner or later, something will pop into my head and that just turns into a post.
That's so true. Before I was sort of like you, I was commenting in 2020 before I decided to start posting in the last day of 2020. And I always thought, gosh, what do people post consistently? I would dabble, but never do it. And the magic is when you commit to it, the ideas just gift you, don't they? It's when you get consistent that they start popping in your brain, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, before you can become consistent, you have to become comfortable with just being out there and putting it out there. And I think that is the biggest hurdle for so many people. I've talked to so many folks who say, what if somebody at your company doesn't like it? I mean, if somebody at my company doesn't like it, then that means that they don't really like who I am as a person or like interacting with me. I'm guessing they wouldn't want me to work at their company if that's the case. You know what I mean? So as long as you're being your authentic self, there shouldn't be any surprises. You sort of say, oh yeah, that's something I would expect. That's why it's so important to just be comfortable with yourself, care a little bit less about what people might think about it, and just go for it. At worst case scenario, somebody can scroll past your stuff, or they leave a negative comment, you just block them or whatever you need to do. I've never really had to deal with trolls.
No, and that's the beauty of LinkedIn. It's a real supportive community. But why is it that we don't really have that fear on Facebook, Instagram, whatever? I mean, social media makes us vulnerable as far as the fear of judgment and all that. My post yesterday about all the F word, the fear of all those things. It's so true. That's why my mantra is put yourself out there, because you get over that fear when you do. It's the irony of it. But you're right. So many brilliant people are just holding back, and they need to put themselves out there. And so that's why I'm so passionate about what I do and having you, because you're like, you just did this 18 months ago. I mean, it can be done. And then not just that, and this isn't all about like tracking metrics, but here today, we're just showing as an example, because it's other things. It's community, it's friends, it's side businesses, career enhancement, all the things. But just to illustrate to someone, to make it sure they know it's possible, you started just doing it. And then slowly, what would you say was an uptick? Just the consistency. You started getting more people engaging. I always heard it takes about a good 90 days. And I know the first 30 days are very informative too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you have to put in as much as you take out, probably more so, to be honest.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people who say, oh, I'm not getting any engagement. I'm not getting any engagement. The first thing I always do is look at their activity feed and see if they're engaging on other people's content, because it really is a give and take, kind of, not intentionally or by design necessarily, but I think, that's how people are. If you comment on their stuff, they look at your stuff, and then they leave comments, and then conversations start happening. I remember when I first saw LinkedIn's join the conversation slogan in my email inbox, this was like 3 years ago, maybe. I was kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, LinkedIn isn't a conversation. Like, LinkedIn's when I just share articles about Forbes so that, potential job hiring managers see that I think about stuff that I like to read, and now I totally get it, right? It is completely a conversation. It's the largest business conversation in the world, if you think about it. And there are some people that are like, knocking, oh, well, there's so many polls out now, and like, who cares what you had for lunch and this kind of stuff. But at the same time, the first thing we ask our colleagues when we go to work on Monday is usually something like, how was your weekend, right? And you don't answer that with, I'm not telling you because this is an office place and we don't speak about those things. Right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
You spend 40 hours a week with people that are working at the same company that you are and trying to achieve the same goals that you are. And it's important to just bring that personal element to the professional networking environment. I like to sort of view host as almost like a micro networking event, right? People can comment, they can get to know each other. Like, you can see other people's comments and you're like, that's insightful. Let me go see what that person talks about, It's very much kind of like a virtual networking event to a certain degree, and you have conversations. I mean, some of the best conversations I've had on the platform start in the comment section where you find somebody and they're like, oh, that was really insightful. And then you just DM them and say, I'd love talking more about that. And that's kind of what makes it unique.
Absolutely. When you think of just about, not about you, it's just showing up to help others, having a conversation, simple as that. I say it's like talking on Zoom or on the phone to your friend, but we overthink it, and I'm guilty too. But it's the law of reciprocity here at LinkedIn. You give, I swear it'll come back. And it's unlike any other place. And that's why it is the place to build your brand. But one of the things we talked about description is that you started doing this working full time. So that's even more impressive. So you have to say you had to be in a job, in a position where you and your company were comfortable with that. Were there any things that blocked you before or not?
Not really. I mean, I'm very lucky in the sense that I've always worked for technology companies, and most technology companies, at least, sort of smaller startup companies and companies that aren't necessarily, the Fortune 100 with compliance departments and things, and that are too worried about what goes out there. I've worked with tech companies that are basically like, you do what you want. We give you a lot of leeway. We understand that like your LinkedIn page is your LinkedIn page. If you can talk about HomeSnap or you can talk about WillowTree, that's great. We love that. But obviously now I'm in a position where I'm talking a lot more about my employer because that's my job. I love every second of that. I think that's one of the things that was really great about the last year and the work that I've put in, is that it resulted in an opportunity to do something that I probably wouldn't have been able to apply for and get. But because I was putting stuff out there, I got recruited. That's just really sort of the interesting part about creating that content and getting it out there. And the overthinking piece, I mean, it's easy to overthink all the time, but you just try and think about the thing that's most important is people don't care that much, right?
Yes.
Nobody's sitting around being like, did you see what Liam or Michelle posted today? Like, it's not banter and, and they just scroll on to the next thing. And I think people have to realize that too. But it's understandable because LinkedIn was created as a closed platform online for your existing contacts. There's sort of an identity crisis there, I think. And now you've got this head of global community, and you've got a creator mode, and you've got a clear emphasis on increasing the amount of content that gets onto the platform and the number of creators that are building that content. So they're trying to shift very much into a more social site, but their roots are so deeply sewed in, this is just where you keep your closed network. So like even the connect versus follow thing, I don't really get it. I think they're going to do away with connect eventually.
That would be good, like Twitter or something where you just follow someone unless you have to block them. Yeah, it just gets to be an internal turmoil.
Right.
And why cap 30,000? I think they're having a little bit of identity crisis, the shift from where they were to where they're going, and we know with their last week's results, they're phenomenally succeeding, doing well financially. So hopefully they'll pour some money in that. I saw the CEO yesterday talked about how I turned my creator run back on yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Only because I read his post about all these great things are coming soon for people who have it turned on. So I'm like, and I commented on it and he liked it. And, so where else can you get a CEO of a company? You don't see Mark Zuckerberg responding to your stuff, right? And I know he does to other friends of ours and connections and stuff. It's pretty cool how it is. So that just shows you from the top, they're very people-centric and stuff. Hopefully it filters down. I love doing content. I'm so glad. One of the mistakes I should have done years ago, I joined in like 2008. And my previous role was doing it all wrong. And I think you were too, as a recruiter, you were using it, but not the way we do now. So this is all wonderful inspiration. I'm sure there's people watching live or in the replay, hashtag if you are, but where do they start? Because, we both had those, you and I who are out there now, we both had those aspirations. Like, I want to get out there, but I don't know how. What would you say to them is the baby step?
First and foremost, I would say find people that are doing creative work on LinkedIn now that resonates with you, and start following them, engaging with their content, get familiar with some of the names. I always talk about Brenda Meller's Rockstar List because I remember I started following Brenda. I can't remember. I think it was in like 2019. We connected at first. And I just thought it was super cool that she was doing that. The fact that she had this Rockstar List that she put together. At that time, it was every month, I think, and then she started breaking it out into different cohorts and doing one on sort of a rotation. And I was at the time thinking, man, it would be so cool if I could someday get on that list, And sure as fate, it happened a couple of months ago, 6 months ago, maybe I made it onto that list, which was great. But like, the first thing I did was follow all the people that were on that list, because they're people that have large followings and they're growing their followings. And so how are they doing that? You start to sort of identify which people you really like to follow and which ones you don't, or, who you think has more authentic content than others. I won't go too much deeper into that piece, but like, that's the thing for me that just got the creative juices flowing, started to see who was posting. And if they were posting on a regular basis, or they posted something really vulnerable, you're like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, there's nothing stopping me. And then I think commenting on those folks' content then also gets those creative juices flowing in your mind. And this new feature on LinkedIn that allows you to basically share a comment as a post, which I've only used once, and it was my suspicion is that it didn't get much traction because an actual share, which most of us know LinkedIn does not actually credit people for sharing content all that well. So, it's just that gets you thinking about things that you could be posting about. And from there, it's like, okay, well, if I just wrote that on somebody else's post and I think there's value in that, why don't I just turn that comment into a post of my own? And then you start doing things like that. But the biggest step, once you've followed people, found sort of content that you like talking about, identify the topics, like 2 or 3 topics to talk about, that you're passionate about, then just start putting stuff out there and seeing how it goes, and ignore the stats, right? Like that's the other thing. People talk how they want to see engagement overnight. They want to see, they're expecting an influencer overnight. Nobody did that on LinkedIn, right? Anybody actually generated significant and genuine followings that are actually engaged with what they're putting out there. It's taken time and commitment. I mean, I was spending over the course of a day, probably 2 or 3 hours on LinkedIn at one point in time. Like I just sit in front of the TV. It's funny. I called it LinkedIn and chill. I realized that I actually don't have a very good pop culture.
I remember that post, the whole thing. You did a thing about the Netflix and chill thing. I remember that. Yeah.
Hey, Joel, you Netflix and chill, Joel. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. No, but it takes a commitment at first. But I mean, once you get established, you're not exactly spending that much time anymore, right? You have to maintain the momentum, right? So kind of like going out at first, you get a little out there, spend some time like anything, build that up. And then the thing is just posting. And the hardest thing is to get out there. And then the second hardest thing is to not look at the numbers, because we get deflated. We're humans. Like, I always tell my friends and my clients, no one, like you said, no one is taking this personally. No one is going to dislike you. It's just because most of the time it's not relevant to them. It's not in context to them. So it's not that. So you just got to find your people and start writing directly to them, and you will keep expanding that. But that's the thing. It's not that I don't think it's a brilliant post. We're too busy. If there was 6 posts in the feed, every day, then we could probably give it all the love. But there's thousands, millions. I mean, I don't even know how many there are in a single day, but it's crazy. So that's the thing. It's just getting out there. And then how did you go from 450 to 12 million? I mean, I know I try not to, like I just said, don't pay attention to the bandies, but it is a measurement here. So when did you start upticking so fast? What are the secrets?
So outreach, growing your audience, I think is important. Connecting with people. For the first 3 or 4 months of 2020, I was doing a lot of connection requests with people. I was finding people who created content. I was finding people who had a lot of traction, posting content about specific hashtags that I cared about, and connecting with them. And when you connect with somebody, one of the things that I look at, the first thing I look at typically when I'm connecting with somebody, is how many mutual connections we have. Because to me, that's sort of an indication of, how likely we are to be interested in the same things, or at least know a lot of the same people, et cetera. And so, there are certain thresholds that I have where I'll say, okay, well, if I have 100 or 200 mutual connections with this person, I probably want to, and they're a content creator, I probably want to reach out to them and connect with them. And so I was adding a good number of people to my network by doing outreach, manual outreach.
Okay.
And then engaging with those folks' content pretty consistently. But even then, like if people don't really want to spend 2 or 3 hours on the platform every day, or sit in front of their TV just reaching out to connections, it is just about finding that core group, right? So like maybe there's 30 or 40 people that you bookmark all of their profile streams, and you open them all up in a window, and you just look through their stuff and you comment, and you'll start to notice that the same people are there on the same stuff on a regular basis. I mean, you realize very quickly how small of a community LinkedIn is, even if it's a very big community, right? But the number of people that are actually creating content on a weekly basis is something like 1 million users, right? So it's not that large. So if you get in there and you start talking with people in the comment sections of popular content creators, that sort of does a lot of it. And then in the first quarter, at some point, I got access to Shield, which I am a huge believer of. I'm an operations person in that heart, and so I believe that what gets measured gets better. I discovered Shield, and I was like, wow, this is like Google Analytics for LinkedIn. I mean, we need this on LinkedIn as if they're serious about creators creating, they have to give us the information we need to better understand our audience, right? And so I started analyzing the posts that I did on a regular basis. I started analyzing the performance of those posts relative to the content type. And, everything's different, but I started to notice some trends. And so I started focusing on specific types of content over others, and different types of topics that I could sort of see, okay, well, when I talk about this topic, I get a lot more engagement than if I talk about this topic. So you start to sort of figure out what your voice is, and just intuitively know how to put it out there.
Yeah, and you were generous. I remember when I got hopped on in early January, I remember we were in Clubhouse or something, and you shared your 7 Shield Loom video. So that was
Yep.
really helpful. So yeah, that helped me a lot. Yeah, I believe in that too. One of the things about you too, you really reached out, because I know when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about our newsletter, which you got, because you have connections to LinkedIn. So not only is it just people, I mean, the link company people are pretty friendly. You've really latched onto some of those people too, right?
Yeah, I can't remember when it was, but I sent a Loom video. I'm a big fan of Loom. It's a screen recording technology. Is not necessarily sort of new in terms of what it offers, but it does it in a very different and easy way. And I'm a big fan of it, and I use them a lot. And I just sent a Loom video of myself talking to Ryan Roslansky and asked him if he would connect with me, and he did. And then connected with Daniel Shapiro and Daniel Roth and a couple of those folks. And that's the other thing. Like if you want to get more visibility on the LinkedIn platform, think of every opportunity to put your name somewhere as a micro ad, right? So if you're not subscribed to the LinkedIn newsletters, you should be, because they have really good distribution, right? And they are also talking about things that LinkedIn clearly thinks are important to talk about. So if you're, sort of looking for content ideas and inspiration, or you just want to get more visibility on your profile, like you should be dropping a comment on all of those big newsletters so that people see your name. And if they're intrigued by what you said, they'll check out your profile. And, if you're in sales, that could turn into something. If you're not, then it's just another connection, right? So, those are the other things that are really important. And yeah, I think that the LinkedIn team is very interested in expanding voices of creators and turning this platform into something that is a lot more content saturated than it is currently. And I think that's a good thing.
So you got connected, you got that newsletter. Are you going to be doing a newsletter soon?
Yeah, there's a lot of things on LinkedIn that I would love to do. I think, that's one of the things that's where working full time for a company, puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage from your own personal sort of branding endeavors, because you don't have time to sort of spend as much time as you want on things like newsletters or LinkedIn Live strategy, or like a consistent, it's not really possible for me right now to have a consistent, weekly podcast or LinkedIn Live. And so, yeah, I want to do the newsletter and put the newsletter out. I need to think of a name. So if anybody has ideas, drop comments or let me know. But yeah, that is certainly something that I foresee myself taking advantage of. It's just a matter of getting some more time. And I've only been at my current job for 6 weeks. I'm knee deep in a lot of stuff there and trying to figure everything out.
You're in a new city too. You moved, right?
Yeah. My family and I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina.
So that's a big adjustment, and you have little ones. Well, that's the thing. So, you don't have to go out and do a newsletter, podcast, or LinkedIn Live, but just start with your personal brand, even if you're working full time. I mean, you're a prime example. You pretty much just gave us a top overview of how to do it. And so just that enough, because not only that, you get to know people, you got your new job that way. I mean, I go on and on and on. I think we know why it's so important. So with that being said, I'm looking at the time because I do have another presentation at the top of the hour today. I want to get your 3 takeaways and then your personal mantra. And then I want to know where we can follow you other than your profile. So with that being said, what are the top 3 takeaways you would suggest someone who wants to be just like you February 2020?
Regularly post 5 times a week if you can, right? Or 3 to 5 times a week. Make sure that you are responding to comments on your posts, and make sure that you are commenting on other people's posts. That is, I think engagement is tantamount. You have to be engaging with other people's content, and be patient, right? So like my mantra is pace equals success, which is patience, authenticity, consistency, and engagement. Those will generally get you success or growth on the platform, but you have to do them all really, really well. And when you're starting out, patience and consistency are the hardest ones, right? You're like, oh, I want this, like this should have happened by now. I should have gone viral by now. It's like, no, like patience. Don't overthink it. And so those are my biggest pieces of advice. And if you're sitting on the ledge and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should post this, post it. Like ask yourself, will this offend 50% of the people who read it? Chances are that it won't, because we don't use LinkedIn for that purpose really. And so just post it and let it ride, and don't delete it if it doesn't do well. Like all of your content is you speaking your mind, and that is never a bad thing. Even if people don't necessarily see it within the first 24 hours, it's still there. It's still somebody that could check your profile down the line and say, let's see what they're thinking about and how they think. And that's really important. Yeah,
because people are still seeing you, even if early on you're just jumping in. They're still seeing you. Got to start somewhere. You can't just put your toe in the water, take it out. You got to start. And I promise you each day gets better. So yeah, that's great. And then, I asked you on the spot before we got live, like, what's your professional or personal mantra? Your pace thing could be yours. Do you want to tell people again, unless you had one to share?
I have another one that I'll just share as well, but yeah, pace equals success. That's patience, authenticity, consistency, and engagement.
Love it.
Equals success. You can intertwine empathy and engagement in there. If you remove the LinkedIn component, I think empathy is a very important part of success in business. And then just in terms, there's two quotes that stick with me in everything that I do. The first is I'm a big believer in luck, and I find that the harder I work, the more of it I have. That's a Thomas Jefferson quote, and that's big for me. And then the other is, there are no strangers here, they're friends you've not yet met, which is a Yeats quote. And if anything, I think my experience on LinkedIn in the last year and a half, a little over a year and a half, has been sort of completely represented by that quote. There are so many people on this platform that I've become friends with that were once strangers. And I think that's what a lot of people realize. Like, your colleagues and people that you've worked with at past companies who are in your network on LinkedIn, they were strangers once too. You had to get them as well. So why treat anybody else on the platform differently? It's just a difference of not having worked with them before, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't have something in common. So that's the approach I take to the platform. It's working out for me pretty well. So
no, I think so. Today's post, all these people were giving you testimonials like, he's the man, he's the best, he was my mentor. So, and that's just probably a small amount of the people you've touched and are still touching. So that's another reason why to put yourself out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you never know who's reading your stuff, and you never know when they might need it or turn around and want to hire you or something. You know what I mean? There's a lot more upside than there is downside to posting on this platform.
Well, that's awesome. So I know you're working full time and you got to get back to work, but where can people find you? Should they just follow you on LinkedIn to get all your awesome content? It's the best place for now.
Yeah, following me on LinkedIn is a good place to start. My hashtag is Liam on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to find me for content for the moment.
Then didn't you have a LinkedIn club, and where's your status in your LinkedIn Clubhouse club?
Yeah, I did. I had the LinkedIn Enthusiast Club. We went so hot and heavy on Clubhouse for 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
We were doing shows every morning from 8 a.m. to pretty much 10 a.m. and had a blast, loved it, forged some really strong relationships with people, as Andy Foote likes to say, bringing people from the LinkedIn periphery into focus. That's kind of what Clubhouse did for so many of us. But it's very time consuming. And at the end of the day, it ended up being too much for most of us to continue doing and maintain our work schedules, family schedules, all that stuff. So haven't really spent as much time on there. Are you still going?
Once a week, I'm now co-hosting on Thursdays in the LinkedIn Mastery. So that gives me that fix. I kind of put my personal branding mastery weekly show on hold too, because it was just, can't do all the things,
Yep. No, so, Bobby's Thought Leadership Branding Club's awesome. And
yeah, no, that's 30, 15,000 members. He's amazing. 30 something shows or rooms a week, but LinkedIn Mastery is still going strong with, day 200 plus. So it is phenomenal. I just want to thank you for that 90 days or whatever. You guys were a huge help to so many people. You had phenomenal growth. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And it was honestly, it was as helpful for us, I think, as it was for everybody that we helped, because we just needed to relate to people. We needed to talk to people. We needed to geek out with others who are passionate about what we are. If nothing else, that Clubhouse platform does very, very well at that.
Yeah. And you formed a good community, a tight bond of friends too. We all did. So thank you so much, Liam, for today. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We definitely need more impactful entrepreneurs like you out there. So if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you build your personal brand to grow your business, please check out yourbrandyourbusiness.com. And until next time, you have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. Now go put yourself out there and watch the business of you grow.